Well, hello again, everybody. This is Dan John from danjohnuniversity.com. Welcome once again to our podcast and welcome back. Reminder, if you have a question, email them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. I say that every week, and the questions are been really outstanding recently. Well, really since the beginning, we've had some outstanding questions, and I appreciate it. Let's get going. It is a nice time of year for me. It is the height of track season as I'm speaking this right now. My athletes are coming off conference championships and a bunch of nationally ranked throws recently, so it's been nice. It's a nice time of year for me. The hardest thing, and there's lessons, of course, here, is, I work with athletes, 3 years, 8 years, longer in some cases. And with the throws, you spend, years, getting yourself ready for 2 seconds of activity in some cases. The javelin might be the longest because of the run up, but even then, with the events happen so quickly, all that work for poof, and it's over. It's a challenge as an athlete, as a coach, to get everybody prepared. But this is the time of year where everything seems to work out well. So good for them and good for you for listening today. So let's get started. We got a question from Mark. Okay, this is a good, kind of an interesting, a little different question, but it'll be fun. How do you set goals? This is from Mark. How do you set goals so you finished the program? This would be a question that right there, let's put a line in the sand. I do a lot of programs that are like 12-week programs. That's Dave Turner's peaking program for Olympic lifting. Marty Gallagher has a really long peaking program that he gives his powerlifters to. On those kind of programs, it's over because you step on the platform at an Olympic lifting competition or at a powerlifting competition and you get ready to go. So real quick, Mark, I call that performance. Now, fitness is the ability to do a task. That goes all the way back to Charles Darwin, and I'm sure countless generations before that probably basically meant the same thing. Fit, and I say this all the time, comes from the old Nordic it means to knit. The best way to think of fitness really is a jigsaw puzzle. When the piece fits, everything ties in. So are you fit really just means, can you handle the task? Performance is slightly different because it's when someone calls your name and you step up on the stage and you go. When I think of most programs, because of my sports background, I tend to think that you're trying to peak for something at a certain time in a certain place. But in your question, you asked for more. So let's go on to that. So I guess right in the beginning, let's make sure we're going to push, the nationals are on, June 26th. We're not thinking that way. We're thinking of other programs. Some programs are time duration. For example, a 30-day push-up challenge, but did you hear the word you used? Challenge. Mercifully ends after 30 days. Do you have any helpful guidelines to design programs with set endpoints or have an objective? And for even more general purpose programs, easy strength, for example, so one can say, I finished X program, reflect on the program's success, make changes, or consider a new challenge. He has a follow-up here, and I'm going to read it, but I think many of our listeners probably already know where I'm going to head with the answer. For example, I trained for a 5K run at the end of October. There is a clear end goal and end date for my running season. For context, I had to start with intervals, 10 seconds run and 1 minute walk. So a 5K is a pretty lofty goal for me, okay? My current progress is 20 intervals of 54-second runs with a 2 minute walk 3 days per week. That's an interesting way to put together a program. I increased the run duration interval by 6 seconds every week with the goal of running the whole 5K. Last year, I only managed to run about half of it and walked the remainder. I still consider this a success, consider my starting point. I'd like to maybe discuss your running program. As a track coach, we would do things differently, but keep doing what you're doing, but we could talk about it another time. One of the foundational points of most good goal setting things is start with the end in mind. And I think that's an issue we often have. So you used a couple of words here that I want to make sure we talk about them. In my world, and in your example here, Mark, we're talking about a specific day, a specific time, and the gun's going to go off in your case, or whatever happens with the 5K run. I don't sure if they use a gun or not, but okay, you begin, you run, 13, 14, 15, 20 minutes later, you finish. Yay for you, high fives around, and you've completed the task. That's the track and field model. That's the weightlifting model, including Olympic lifting, powerlifting. And that, of course, would be the swimming model. Those are the sports that would be the easiest for me to talk about pure peaking programs. Let's move those just to the side. Then you mentioned challenges. Now, challenges are kind of a great idea. I think challenges are marvelous for most people. You take a month aside, you take 20 days aside, you take 2 weeks aside, and you do something. One of the reasons I like the Atkins diet so much is for 2 weeks, you're gonna try to go 0 carbs. Well, if it's an absolute disaster for you by the way you're wired or whatever, and you get to the end of the 2 weeks and you say, I'm never doing that again, good, because maybe that tells you that of the countless choices for dietary restrictions, that's not one for you. My friends who've done the Phil Maffetone 2-week thing, they've said that the fun part of it is after the 2 weeks of holding back on things, then you start adding a food a day or however it works out. I think it's, and if your body doesn't like the reaction, you throw that one to the side for a while. 2 weeks, 2 weeks. The 10,000 swing challenge is as designed, is 20 workouts of 500 swings a day. Well, when you finish the 20th workout, you're finished, you're done. There's nothing else. I mean, you might have, and the interesting thing, you might have no physical changes at all. Now, a lot of people, like with me, I've always noticed my grip is better after it, and my hinge is better. And I usually promise I'll never do that again, and then I get looped into it, just like a couple months ago, I got looped into doing it again. Those are challenges. I think for the general population, I think it's important to understand the value of a peaking program. And you look at that, and there is value to that because there's going to be an events even for, my neighbor right there who's working on her lawn. She might have a reunion coming up. She might have a wedding or something like that. She wants to look a little special for it. Well, give us 12 weeks. We can arrange some things. Good things happen. The wedding or reunion happens. Good for you. Ideally, some of the stuff would stick, if she decides that water is the most important beverage in her life, or that she needs more sleep every night. Blessings, blessings, win, 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 good, good, good. Challenges have a value, and I like what you said about the push-up challenge, because at the end of it, you're like, I'm so glad that's behind me. And then there's that other kind of fuzzy one in the middle where we buy a book, we read an article, we get a program, we get an ebook, and there's these programs in there and we do them. My concern with those kinds of things always is make sure it's a principle-based program. For me, if you're going to do any program in the world, Pat Flynn and I have talked about this on his podcast a number of times. I think for most people, 2 to 4 days a week, you can lift weights. For most people, 1 day a week is nice to get kind of sweaty, okay? For most, and that would be complexes or sprints up a hill or whatever it is. Probably every day, but certainly 3 to 4 days a week, a longer walk. Water's your major beverage, vegetables, sleep, the drill. If a program is based on good principles, this ebook you bought is based on good principles, then I'm all for it. In the same way that if the bulk of your meals, and just if the bulk of your meals, here are these 20 wonderful foods that are the staple of every meal, and I always, on the wandering weights, I always send out those little lists of, sometimes I'll send out a little list of the superfoods. Easy Strength for Fat Loss, the booklet has that little whole chapter on, all the superfoods, because I love them. It's usually salmon, almonds is usually on the list. Olives is always on the list. Coffee's always on the list. Sometimes wine, sometimes chocolate. Oatmeal almost always makes it. Certain yogurts almost always make, certain berries, blueberries especially. So if those are your 20 base foods, and then after that you add other ingredients, you're going to be fine. So good training is a lot of like a good foundation for an eating program. As long as you got the basics, the staples in there, the kind of the superfoods or the super ideas like walking after you lift, or lifting weights, walking. Those are the super ideas, I guess. You'll be okay. The issue we have here, Mark, and the reason I wanted to answer this question is because you have a point in here called, what about the end goal? And I think personally that should be established right in the beginning. So every year when I was a young thrower, I would write up a list of what I learned from last year, ideas I was going to have from this season, and then I'd write down a goal. And very often I got the goal. I know my freshman year in college, I got my goal, no question. I wanted to throw 160. I was shy of my sophomore goal, which was throwing 180. I threw 172. Some years I got my goals and some years I didn't. But I would write those goals up in September, October, when school started, knowing that I had until May and June where the big track meets were to get to them. So we're looking at, 8 to 10 months every year of really being that goal focused. Having a good goal at the end is fine. The issue is that most questions I get, most of the things people want from me are generally goals about fat loss or weight loss, is what they usually say, but it's usually fat loss is what they mean. The best thing you can do for most goals is little and often over the long haul. So when I'm reading this question, you have this thing in October. We have about 6 months-ish, maybe a little less, but basically about 6 months from when I'm reading this question to this October race. That is plenty of time for you to achieve the goal of finishing the 5K without stopping. It's just the idea that, like you're doing, you just have to keep building on it. Don't rush the process. Just keep coming back. Incremental improvements is far superior, I think, long-term than these quick hit and run kind of programs. Brad Pillen, the guy who Eat, Stop, Eat books, intermittent fasting, he makes a point about doing this 1 day a week, 24-hour fast. So you eat dinner on Monday and then you eat dinner on Tuesday. That you don't eat in between. There's your 1 day a week fast. It's pretty doable. Really, truly is. Some of us naturally do that, when you have busy careers and kids. I can remember many times as a coach talking to an assistant coach, and it'd be something like, I forgot to eat because you get so busy, with everything going on. But his point is, you might only lose 1/3 to 1/2 pound a week doing this. But, that's 26 pounds a year. That is a huge change. But if you try to lose 26 pounds in a month, that doesn't stick. So I like your question here. I'm starting to get myself a little less focused on the end goals. I'm much more focused on the process. I say this to my athletes. I say this in my workshops. If you focus on the process, the results speak for themselves. So the only thing I would say for you is if you continue to focus on the process of your goals, and this is true for all of our listeners, the results will speak for themselves. I hope that helped. It's always these are tough questions to answer sometimes, but I did my best. And thank you for asking that. We got a question from Harry. I've been introduced to Steve Justa through the writings of yourself and Pavel, and recently purchased the book Rock, Iron, and Steel. That book's been around for a while. I'm pretty sure it's over 2 decades. I'm sure of it, but I couldn't tell you when I first saw it. Justin mentions the concept of strength endurance and how this is essential for everyday people. He recommended 1 or 2 workouts a month of 2,000 reps, 20 times 100, or however one wishes to program it, and regular workouts involving carries and wearing weighted vests. Well, yeah, I love that. I wonder what your opinion would be on upping sets in general. I know you don't like questions about other programs, so in short, is it a valid method of progression to chase the sets? And can we use these grueling barbell workouts to increase strength endurance? So I come from a different generation than most of our listeners in my weight training. One of the things that really made me smile when I first read Arnold, The Education of a Bodybuilder, I was a freshman at Skyline College, so 1975, and it was he and his friends going out in the woods, bringing a barbell and picking an exercise and doing it to total exhaustion, because that's something we used to do. We would pick an exercise, and almost universally for us at the time, it was an upper body exercise. Though later I tried this with squats, and that was interesting. And you just do that single exercise, once a week, once a month, once every couple of months. You go find some place, and you and your friends do this exercise. You have a grill, maybe you have a little excessive beer and wine, and you just sit there and do it. Not long ago, I was on a lake in Germany, and we basically did the exact same thing with kettlebells. And if you can also see this smile I have on my face with these memories. One of the things I like about this kind of workout done in community is it's fun. It's, you question your sanity about halfway through it, or sooner than that actually, but they're fun. And for days or weeks later, you get this bump, and maybe it is that strength endurance, maybe not, I don't know. But I think there's great value in doing those kind of one-off workouts every so often where you really push it. Now, I have the 10,000 swing challenge. It's not meant to be done as a training program. It's simply a challenge, and it brings us back to the first question today. So yeah, I like this idea. Now, for my athletes, we would go in a different direction. Would there be value for wrestlers doing this? Yes, I think there's real value in that, because there is that tenacity that this will train, and maybe it will carry over into the mat, onto the mat, with that kind of strange endurance you need to wrestle or fight of any kind. For my discus throwers, this might be a fun, my thrower types, this might be a fun thing to do in the way off season. I can remember not that long ago, us doing these we used to call it the death march, this death march style of loaded carries, where you just tried to go as far as you could. Greg Cook, of course, has the Cook drill, which is very similar. This idea that you put a load on yourself, and you just you push yourself through new barriers. I think there's value. In American football, I think there's real value to this, because there is a strange need in American football. You got to be really fast to play the modern game of American football, but you also really have to have a lot of armor, physical armor on yourself. And you got to be able to now, The wide receiver core, I mean, they're probably running, well, and especially with the pregame work, I wouldn't be surprised if they're running 100 to 200 high-speed routes on a game day. That's a lot of sprints. That's a lot of cuts. So anything we can do to get them in a kind of conditioning where you can just keep coming back might have value. So long answer shorter. I think there's great value in it. I think there's great value in it. It's got to be dosed correctly, which means that you don't want to be doing this the day before something really important. I mean, I don't know. The night before your wedding, probably not a real good idea, or your daughter's wedding to, I don't know, be doing all this too much. But there's value in it. I love the idea of doing it. I love the idea of picking an exercise and doing it. Oddly, and I didn't even think about this, Mike Warren Brown and I today decided just to do military presses for the entire workout. And we did set after set after set after set after set. And I didn't even see this question until right now, just a few minutes before this. But thinking on the top of my head, this is something we used to do a lot. One of the ways I put together the early one lift a day program stuff was that there would be these ridiculously high volume days where you do just one lift. With squats, there are some residual issues that last for another week or two. Something like a military press, if you're me, because I can handle a fair volume of pressing, it's not so bad. So a lot of it's going to be just playing around with it. I think there's great value to it. Steve has some, the work, some of the stuff he used to share with us 20 years ago, some of the workouts he would do with these massive pieces of steel and wood and logs and stones was really incredible. There's value in it, yes. Just the only thing that just kind of try it once with something reasonable. Check in on yourself, and maybe you can throw it in. Try it once a month at first, and then see if you can sneak it up to maybe twice a month. For most people, I don't know if doing it much more than that would be helpful. Okay? All right, thank you. We had a question from Hugh. On your recent podcast, you showed a book called Bodybuilding for Self-Defense. Could you talk more about it and recommend a few exercises from it? Okay, this is Miles Callum's book, Bodybuilding and Self-Defense. This is probably the second or third or maybe fourth edition I've bought of this book. And I've said many times, this is the book that was at the Orange Library. For some reason, South San Francisco, we have a lot of things called orange there. I've never seen an orange tree in South City, but we have Orange Park, but it's really a very simple book. There's nothing fancy about it at all. But this is the book so there's chapters on basic equipment, spring grips, these things, those stretchy bands and all that other stuff. And then he has a whole chapter on tumbling and falling, which, interesting, in my case anyway, I've come back to the tumbling and the break falling and the rolling over and over and over again in my career. To train American football, rugby, special forces, tumbling is a great way to get the strangest conditioning you'll ever have in your life. After that, he has a training program that, there's nothing new to it at all. It's the bench press, the regular press, which is the military press, squats, rows, curls, and deadlifts. Basically, the powerlifting 3 plus curls, rows, and military press. That's the same cutting edge program. Add sit-ups to it that Arnold and Franco Columbo both recommended. They also have a lot of other exercises. They have this was a very popular, we used to call it the seesaw press. It's also called the alternating dumbbell press. The Weider magazine, All-American Athlete, recommended that exercise as being one of the best things you can do for overall strength for any athlete. They have some exercises like side bends and things like that that some people started to say about after that time it was really dangerous on your spine. Interesting is that they've kind of come back. Side bends seem to, be very popular, very unpopular, very popular, very unpopular. I think there's safer ways to do side bends. One year, I spent a year, you hold a weight in your hand over like this, weight with both hands, and they're called Saxon side bends. I did them because we thought it would actually help the discus throw. And with reasonable weight, you can pull it off pretty easily. You do get weirdly sore. And then after that is a whole section on breaking hand locks, breaking, someone grabs you, what to do with yourself, the basics of self-defense, the basics of judo, and then how to handle things like a knife attack and if someone points a gun at you. And I still think the book is fabulous. I always did. Are there better books since Miles Callum book from, let's see, what year is this printed? 62, I think this copy is from. It's 1962. The most interesting thing about the book is I was 5 when it came out, and I still say it's probably as good as anything I've written or anybody else. But, the human body hasn't changed that much. And sometimes people will post here or other places. All you need to do is, someone will ask a question, and then I'll get this, you just need to squat, bench, deadlift, row, military, and curl. Right. What Miles Callum said, what Bosco, the Bosco training system, Arnold, Franco, everybody said the same thing. Reg Park, it's always been true. The basics in the weight room are always the best. Obviously, there's going to be a population that needs to use other equipment. There's going to be other populations that need to do other things, but the basics are always the basics. So thanks. It was fun. I picked up that book, 7 Days of Sunday, and those are the books that really changed my life. So thank you. Good memory. Oh, and The Sword and the Stone. Huh. That was one day in the 8th grade. I picked up Bodybuilding Self-Defense, 7 Days of Sunday, where on Wednesday I met Kenny Avery, who threw the discus, which is why I threw discus. And I read that book there, The Sword and the Stone, for the first time. And it's interesting because here we are, I don't know, almost 60 years later, and they're still foundational books for me. So thanks for letting me go down memory lane there. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Hugh. Okay, we've got a question from Joe. Hello, Joe. Joe says this. He says, I've been focusing on Olympic lifting for about a year now in pursuit of my body weight press and snatch. That's a good goal. That is a good goal, and it's always been a good goal. I'm going after these standards in support of my main hobby of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And again, I wish you guys would type out Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for me, okay? And I feel like I'm stalled at 82% body weight for the press and 68% body weight for the snatch at a body weight 212. Well, let's be honest, a 212 clean and press is an impressive lift. A 212 snatch is an impressive lift. I mean, those are good lifts. So just kind of remember your end goal is a good one, My program has been 2 to 3 days a week of clean and press and snatch, following the rule of 10, so easy strength, followed by loaded carries with some minor course corrections and additions along the way based on feedback from the forum. There was also a short period where life forced me into a Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday weekend warrior program. Thanks for that, by the way. Oh, you're very welcome. For those of you who don't know my weekend warrior program, it's when you're a busy person and you really can't get Monday through Friday, you can barely even get a workout in. So on Wednesday, we just have you do a short, quick workout that supports your goals. I've had people just do power cleans on Wednesdays. I've just had people do front squats. That's it on Wednesdays. And then on Saturday and Sunday, you try to get One of the days maybe a more power-focused workout, and the other day more a technical-focused workout, or however it works out. It can be very good. My question is this, says Joe. Do I need to keep hammering, or would it be a good idea to take a break and run something else like the workout generator for a cycle or two and then get back to the pressing and snatching and keep progressing? Well, yeah, if I could do everything again, Joe, and I think I've been pretty honest about this on the Q&As, on the forum, and in my workshops, I would have stuck to the advice of Tommy Kono, where you prepare yourself for an Olympic lifting meet, give yourself 8 to 12 weeks, so 2 to 3 months. After those 2 to 3 months, the following Monday, boom, you bodybuild. And the workout generator is a bodybuilding program at its base. It's a very simple one. Takes us right back to Miles Callum's question, the last one. The workout generator and Miles' work from 1962 they walk almost hand in hand together. The only thing I'd say is that we do more loaded carries now, and we probably do more mobility work now. But of course, we also sit in chairs more now too. So, there you go. There's always going to be something in human history that changes, within decades. I'd love the idea of you going with the workout generator. And if you can, turn your brain off as much as you can about the goal of the press and the snatch. I don't mind you reading articles about improving your clean and press or your squat snatch. I don't mind that. And I don't mind you, looking at videos and maybe even taking some notes. But do your best to push it in the back and we used to call it the subconscious. I don't know what we call it anymore. But let your mind kind of work through it, kind of think through your technique. Try to simplify things. 4 to 6 weeks in the workout generator, 2 months even, and then go back to your clean and press and your squat snatch stuff. I think it's a great idea. Sometimes, and this is the thing I missed by not doing that, is sometimes when you do some general training, you fix those little issues. I don't call it magically, but maybe you have a weakness, a system weakness, a specific joint, a specific area, where just kind of washing it through for a few weeks or 2 months or so might be all you need to put it together so you snatch and clean and jerk, clean and press more. Yeah, so I like your idea. I like your idea a lot. Workout generator for the win. And thank you for sharing that with us, okay? And good luck. That'll be the clean and press. That'll be impressive. The snatch, that'll be impressive. Doing them both, you're a strong young man, okay? All right. So we got a question from Rob. I have been a fan of yours for a while, and I've always been intrigued by the Olympic lifts. I have recently started doing cleans using lightweight 95 pounds to get technique down. Here are my questions. I feel like 95 pounds is too light, and I'm just throwing the weight up, and it might be hurting my technique because it's too light. Would going heavier, though not outrageously, help me get my form better? Yes. Yeah, that is something that's true. But even if, say like you said, all I have is 95 pounds, there are things you can do. The first, and one of the people on the forum, Dan John University forum, sent me a video, and one of the things the person works on really hard is whipping the elbows so hard. And one of the things I liked, the person was training kind of light, but the elbow whip was phenomenal in the clean. And then when they showed me some videos of the snatch, the elbow whip was amazing in the snatch. So even with light weights, you can really teach yourself the basics of the Olympic lifts fairly well. Is it perfect? No. So very few things are perfect. So let's not worry about that right now. The other thing you can also do, and this is something I do with my athletes or anybody I'm working with one-on-one, is you start the bar on the floor and you lift it only about this much and pause. You lift the weight off the ground that much, you reconnect your lats, you make sure your lower back is locked and loaded, you make sure your chin is in a good position, You wiggle your toes, whatever you got to do. And then after that, you move up another bit. You double check again all your positions. You keep doing that until you get right below the knee. You check positions, you slide it up just above the knee. You check positions, and then bam, you hit the lift. You hit the lift. And you try, so you take something light, you can actually do this lift with up to 80% of your max if you take it seriously. The reps are just one because it takes so long, and they can be exhausting. But you do these, I call them 1 second lifts because you pause, or 1 inch cleans, 1 inch snatches, 1 second, either one, they're all the same. Those pauses are stopping all the momentum, any momentum building up as you come up. And then you focus on the big whip. You focus on your positions as you get underneath the bar. Yeah, there's real value in this idea. So yes, adding weight is going to be the route most of us take, but trying this exercise is also another little. This exercise will be a nice thing for you to toss in also. Question number 2. Being as I'm just started the lifts and I want to get the form correct, how often should I train them? For reference, I'm 37 and I've been weightlifting in some form since I was 13. I spent a few years competing in strongman and powerlifting in my mid to late 20s. I got back to the gym at the beginning of the year after a 2.5 year layoff for numerous reasons, though did manage to get some kettlebells and train with them during this time. I think if you're just for you, Rob, I think if you had 3 Olympic lifting sessions a week, however it works out, whether it's clean, if you snatch, but remember, you are practicing the Olympic lifts. One of the things that helped me, I think, as a coach, and I wish I'd have known this a little bit better when I was a younger Olympic lifter, was that you have to practice, you have to practice, you have to practice. So practicing means you don't miss. Practicing means you focus on good technique. Practicing means you're working on tempo, the rhythm. Not, but, and I think that's what you want to do. If you can practice the Olympic lifts 3 days a week, by the way, you still get just as sore practicing the Olympic lifts. And as I discovered in my career, just as sweaty just practicing. But going too heavy too often, which is what you have to do when you're on the platform, but in the learning process, it doesn't help much at all. So I like 3 days a week. I like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, depending on what your life is. And if you have more questions, feel free to ask. I hope this helps. This is a question from Chris. My question relates to load over the 40-day period, which is, of course, I think you're talking about the 40-day workout and also known as easy strength. I'm currently doing easy strength for fat loss, so 3x3x3 on press and deadlift and 6x1 on the vertical pull. I like that. The deadlift has been progressing well. University Chris, people say that the deadlift goes, if easy strength had a secret, it helps your deadlift, yeah. Lifts are increasing, it's easier to keep it easy, if that makes sense. Yes, it does. So too with the pull-ups, making good progress on those and keeping them easy. However, I stalled out on the press. I didn't miss a rep, but it got hard at 135 pounds. 3 sets of 3 at 135 pounds, Chris, is a good lift. Frankly, most of the places I've trained in my life, pressing 135 for 3 sets of 3 military is going to make you on the edge of the stronger people in every gym I've ever been in. So I backed way off to 95 pounds, which is a wonderful weight for presses, and did that for 4 days. The idea being to keep it easy and not miss. Eventually, I decided to assess on day 10, and to my shock, I pressed 185. Doesn't sound like much, but I had back surgery in July, and rehab's been a struggle. For reference, I weigh 205. Nice work. So I know from your podcast that people tend to stall out on the press early, typically. Yeah, tends to be, yeah. Even people who are born to press. And I'm wondering if you could endorse this idea of backing way off, keeping it easy for a while, and then maybe do 5-3-2 to assess progress at day 20 or maybe day 30, rather than adding weight when it feels easy. You know, Chris, you just summarized what easy strength is. Easy strength, for most of the people it's worked for, it tends to work for people who've been kind of, well, I always joke, beating your face against a wall for a long time. And then you do this easy, the 15-minute workout, and after about 5 workouts, your body goes, thank you. That's what I needed. I used to joke that surgery was God's way of telling me to take it easy. One of the things I picked up through the years is when I would go on those extended vacations, like to the Middle East, when back in 85 and I picked up the liver parasite, or when this would come up in my life or that would come up in my life, and I had to stop training or I had to do something else. Very often, after doing nothing for a while, I came back better than ever. I wish I would have done something like easy strength earlier in my career, because it's such a good platform for the throwing athlete. Your insight is the key, though, is that, okay, I came in and I had 20 days of never missing, making every attempt, never even struggling with attempts. And then when I took the lid off of that pressure cooker, boom, 180, in your case, 185, just flew off my chest. Easiest lift of my life, military press. That's a good lift. 185 in the military is a good lift. Good for you. So yeah, I think you've nailed it. I think you've got an insight in here. But I want all the listeners to make sure you understand what Chris is telling us. Chris is telling us that he was doing the program. He was struggling with one of the lifts. He did a short experiment of backing way off, and boom, he succeeded from there. To me, that's... Chris, you explain easy strength here better than I do. Your practical explanation is better than 90% of the nonsense I write about it. So I appreciate that. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, the book is called Easy Strength Omnibook. It's available at easystrengthomnibook.com. It's also on the bookstore at Dan John University. And the nice thing, Chris, is that you're doing it. And because you're doing it as prescribed, you're doing it exactly right. And then you took this short-term, one lift, experiment, and it went well for you. I'm thinking out loud here that maybe your insights is when the press stalls. When your press stalls on easy strength, back off for 2 weeks with 2 sets of 5 at light weights, and don't even change weights. Just enjoy it. Do what John told me. Just stick with the one weight and just stick with it. The no variation approach. Man, that's good stuff. Thank you. And good luck to you. This is great. Okay, we got a question from John. Could you explain on the development of the ESL for Olympic lifting program and its iterations? Iterations. What were the thoughts behind the changes between the version and attempts and Omnibook? And would you program progressing weight and or distance for carries in the Omnibook version? Yeah, so in the new one that might even be out by the time you hear this, Easy Strength for Fat Loss, I include, I think, 4 or 5 completely different programs. The original ESL for fat loss, Easy Strength for Fat Loss with Olympic lifting program was also called the Fast 15. It was a conversation Pat Flynn and I had. And it was way too hard, I thought. You fast for 15 hours, you do complexes, you snatch, you clean and jerk, and you front squat 5 days a week. And that was hard. And I did it, and it was hard. Later variations became much more reasonable. My favorite one is where we did the squat snatch and the front squat back to back. So squat snatch for 3, front squat for a double, squat snatch for 3, front squat for a double. Then you change your shoes. You go from your lifting boots into your walking shoes. You power clean and press, 1 power clean, 3 press, 3 sets of that, 3 sets of 3 in the press, and then boom, out and walk. That one is extremely easy. You did the snatch complex, the supersetted front squat snatch, and then clean and press and out the door. So really, to answer your question, and I don't mean to be at all vague on this, John, is that I'll answer a question, I'll slap that up on the forum, or like I did a couple weeks ago, I put it up on Watering Weights because somebody asked about it. And so you get the whole program right there in front of you. It really just is, the changes would be the feedback and my own. I try to do something, I don't know if everybody does this, but before I tell you about a program, I do it. I remember I was at a workshop, Perform Better, one time, and one of the most famous people in the fitness industry walked up and started asking me questions about the velocity diet. And I said, because this person had made fun of it. And I said, well, why are you asking me then? He goes, well, you did it, and I want to know about it. I try not to make fun of stuff I haven't done. I've done Bikram yoga. I did a lot of it. I used it as part of my rehab. I got a umbilical hernia doing Bikram yoga when the instructor pushed my chest back in a position and my belly button popped out, which was gross. So I think I can talk about Bikram yoga. I think I can talk about the Olympic lifts. I think I can talk about kettlebell sport. I think I can talk about kettlebells. I think I can talk about power lifts. I think I can talk about American football. I can talk about a lot of things because I did them. But the other thing you have to be careful of, sometimes when you start to do a new program, you make this plan and you set it up, and it makes sense on this, on this piece of paper. It's the smartest program you've done in your life. But once you start doing it within a few days, you're like, what was I thinking? Any kind of linear progression for me, it makes me wonder, what was I thinking within a few days? A lot of the programs I recommend, like I have the one that was in Watering Weights a few weeks ago called the Single Kettlebell Workout. It's also in the book Hardstyle Kettlebell Challenge. And it's a 20-day program for you to practice what you learned at the Hardstyle Kettlebell certification. And it's like one of the, like on day 1, you practice the hinge. You do, I think there's a lot of goblet squats, and there might even be a lot of, like there's Turkish get-ups, unweighted Turkish get-ups, goblet squats, and you practice the hinge. Well, the idea in that program is I wanted you to go into your garage, your gym, or whatever you have after the cert, and get yourself thinking, okay, this is what we learned. Here are the exercises we learned. Got to practice the hinge. You do the goblet squat, you do the Turkish get up, and okay. And then slowly, incrementally, we add more and more to it. The other day I was looking at it, and there is a goblet squat day where it is ridiculous. However, it's a program for a single kettlebell. So if you only have a 16 kilo kettlebell and I'm asking you to do a whole bunch of goblet squats, I'm not really, now, if this was, some barbell program, the volume is way too big. But if it's a goblet squat with a 16K, it's not so bad. So sometimes you have to just keep all those little factors in your mind when you're trying to judge whether or not a program is good or bad. When you go to the Olympic lifts, and you're going to lift 5 days a week, in some of my programs, 3 in some of them, but let's say 5, and you do the complex, you do the squat snatch, you do the clean and jerk, and you do the front squat, that's a lot of squats. And if you're doing it 5 days a week, it's kind of hard to recover. It's a very good question. It's a very good question. It's one of those things that is, let's say this, instead of calling it a very good question, it's a very good dialogue. This is one of those times where you and I need to kind of talk, kind of back and forth. And you'll say something that'll make me go, oh, you're right, I get that. And then I'll say something and you'll go, oh, I see what you mean. Got that. You're right. These kind of questions about, how a program evolves is me now dialoguing with that piece of paper I wrote to start the program. I typed up this program after 2 weeks. Clearly there's too much volume on this particular day, or there's too much here or that. And then I go in and I just, we clean up that piece of paper. We're constantly in a dialogue, coach-athlete, athlete-athlete, program and athlete. And that's, I think, one of the great skills of being a good coach, is to constantly stay in dialogue and realize that one size does not fit all, ever, in anything. Wow. Well, there you go. We're finished here. Episode 196 of the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast is in the books. Listen, again, if you have questions, podcast at DanJohnUniversity.com, and I'll sit here and answer each question as best I can. I really appreciate your questions. I'm very impressed with the audience, and you make my life pretty easy. And I do like it when sometimes you make me reach back and pull a book out and talk about these things. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you're listening. Well then, until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning. I'm Dan John from DanJohnUniversity.com. Thank you.